The parity is going to be absolutely insane. I'm Pete Mundo. Heartland College Sports is where you find us covering the Big 12. The Big 12 football preseason media poll came out, and it is everything you would expect from this league. If you're a Big 12 fan, if you're a college football fan, hang with me here because you are about to get the 5 biggest reasons that this is going to be the most fascinating conference in college football this year. And frankly, it's not going to be all that close. It's not. And the media poll gives you the exact reason it's not going to be all that close. So if you didn't see the preseason media poll that dropped here this week in the Big 12, Utah comes away in the top spot, but it only ekes out the number one spot in the media poll by a single first place vote. Utah got 20, Kansas State got 19. Utah, K-State, Oklahoma State, Kansas at 4, Arizona at 5, followed by Iowa State at 6, West Virginia 7, UCF 8, Tech 9, TCU 10, Colorado 11, Baylor at 12, BYU at 13, Cincinnati at 14, Houston at 15, and then Arizona State at 16. So the 5 biggest takeaways start with this: parity, parity, parity. If you're a Big 12 fan, you are not shocked that 5 teams got first place votes in the Big 12. You're not. In fact, you could have made an argument for 6 or 7 teams to get first place votes in the preseason media poll in the Big 12. But on top of that, you look at how close these teams are in points, and how they basically do this is everybody in the media gets a vote, 1 through 16. They stack those numbers up on top of each other. The team with the most points ends up in first place in the media poll. The team with the fewest points gets last place in the preseason media poll. So Utah had the most points. Arizona State had the fewest points, but it was close. But the closest numbers in the Big 12 preseason media polls came from teams 7 to 11. West Virginia, UCF, Texas Tech, TCU, and Colorado were separated by nothing. About 180 points in the poll, which is just nothing when you break it down and you look at it. So that's what we would expect too. 5 teams get first place votes, and then teams 7 through 11 are separated by basically nothing. That's the Big 12 this year. The difference between Team 4 and Team 11 is going to be a coin flip. You hope a couple of teams separate. It's better for the league when a couple of teams separate, but we're still talking a coin flip here. So there's nothing to it. The separation is minimal, but it's what we all expect and what this conference is going to be about. Now, here's something else when I'm looking at the top takeaways. By the way, hit that thumbs up right below the video on YouTube. We appreciate you doing that. And also, thank you for being here on the podcast. Drop that 5-star rating and review. So when you look at the new Big 12 versus the old Big 12, somebody on our forums did this. Their user's name is Savage Fund. And I thought this was a great breakdown. He calculated the average projected finish of the original Big 12 teams, the Hateful Eight as they're dubbed, last year's new teams, the 4 new teams last year, and the former Pac-12 teams this year. The average finish for the Hateful Eight is 6.6. The average projected finish for the former Pac-12 teams is 8.25. And the average projected finish for last year's new teams, UCF, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, is 12.5. So how should we read into this? Well, the 8 former Big 12 teams that are left, they clearly have the most depth from top to bottom. They have 3 of the top 4 in the preseason poll: Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas. And you look at them and you say, okay, that's what you would expect. They don't have a team lower than 12th. There's quality programs top to bottom. I mean, the worst team for years was Kansas, and Kansas is now damn good. I'll get to them in a second. The former Pac-12 teams have some high-end competition with Utah and Arizona, but the jury's out on Colorado, and the jury's certainly out on Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham. Meantime, you look at last year's teams which included 3 from the group of 5 plus BYU. And there's still some work to do to prove to the media, at least, that they should be considered contenders. They all struggled last year to different degrees, but there certainly is enormous upside for each of those 4 new teams. UCF has recruited incredibly well. UCF can play for a Big 12 championship this year. That wouldn't shock me in the least. Houston has a new coach and a new staff in the hottest recruiting area in the entire nation. They are in the backyard of the biggest recruiting hotbed in America there in Houston. That has potential written all over it. And we've seen that potential at the lower levels. Cincinnati has proven it can reach the mountaintop, getting to a college football playoff. Of course, that was under Luke Fickell, but still, the program has proven it can have that kind of success. And BYU is a national brand that really needs to prove that its model works in the new world order of college football. And I hope that it can. I want it to, but obviously questions remain on that front. So you look at that and you say to yourself, okay, that's what we would expect. You would expect the 8 remaining Big 12 teams to have the most top to bottom quality and quantity, followed by the former Pac-12 teams, but there is obviously high-end competition with Arizona and Utah. And then you have the 4 newcomers from last year who really have tremendous potential, but haven't yet shown it yet. And they have to get to that point where they're getting the credibility, at least from the media, to be considered higher-end contenders in the Big 12 Conference. So that was takeaway number 2. Takeaway number 3 for me. We can't talk enough about Kansas head coach Lance Leipold. The Kansas Jayhawks received several first-place predictions, and they were picked to finish 4th in the Big 12 football preseason media poll. Kansas! Lance Leipold got the job like barely over 3 years ago. He got it after spring camp going into 21. Here he is in year 4, not even a full cycle. And this guy is getting projected by some to win the Big 12 conference. That is unbelievable. And I know we talk about it in the Big 12. If you're a KU fan, you're like, what do you mean? We all know how great Lance is. I'm telling you, the college football world is not giving Lance Leipold enough credit for the job that he has done with this Jayhawks program. This was the bottom of the barrel, worst program in all of college football by a wide margin over the last 10 years. Nobody could turn it around. They'd bring in guys like Charlie Weiss. They bring in guys like Les Miles with national championship rings, and they were clueless. They didn't know what they were doing. This guy, Lance Leipold, comes in from Buffalo, says, give me a shot, and in year 4, he's getting picked to win the damn thing by some people in the media. That is unbelievable. And I know there's been, some sex appeal around KU on the football field in recent years. They got College Game Day last year before that TCU game. They got some decent amount of love this past year. But I still just don't believe the college football world is giving Lance Leipold's staff enough credit for the turnaround job that they have done. And by the way, he has lost some staff members too. So that's just damn impressive. There's no doubt in my mind that it is not getting the attention that it should be getting. Meantime, takeaway number 4 from the Big 12 football preseason media poll. Who is this year's middle-of-the-pack surprise in the Big 12? Last year, Oklahoma State gets to a Big 12 title game. They were projected to finish 7th before the season. 2 years ago, TCU was picked to finish 7th in the Big 12. They obviously got to a Big 12 championship game undefeated, lost it, got to a college football playoff, and got to a national championship game. In 2021, Baylor was picked 8th in the Big 12 in the preseason media poll and went on to win the Big 12 championship. So who is it going to be this year? Iowa State was picked 6th, West Virginia 7th, UCF 8th, Texas Tech 9th. Out of those teams, if I'm looking at those 4, I like West Virginia and I like UCF the best. I like them all. But if you're asking me of those middle-of-the-pack teams, who I believe has the best chance to find itself in a Big 12 championship, it's UCF, and then it's West Virginia. And I say that in that order because West Virginia's schedule is just brutal, and we've talked about it on this show. And if you didn't see Neil Brown on the show, please go find that interview on the YouTube page on the podcast. You're not going to regret watching our interview with Neil Brown. He was just absolutely outstanding. And he admits Penn State, Pittsburgh, 11 Power 5 games. It's crazy. And their in-conference Big 12 schedule is just bonkers out of the gates. So the Mountaineers have the talent, but I hate the schedule for them. I mean, I love it if you're a fan. I love just competitive football, but I hate it for them when it comes to, ease of schedule, because there are other teams in the Big 12 with a much easier schedule than the West Virginia Mountaineers. But look at that middle of the pack and say to yourself, okay, which one of these teams is it going to be? Because history would tell us in recent years, somebody comes out of that middle tier in the preseason poll and ends up playing for a Big 12 championship. The question is who? Or is this the year it's the outlier and it ends up being Utah, K-State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, K-State, whatever it might be? That's what makes this fascinating. So there's going to be that middle of the pack surprise. Then the hot seat watches. This preseason poll is not, maybe it is what Dave Aranda wants to see at Baylor, but Dave Aranda is really the only hot seat coach in the Big 12 right now. And it's pretty hot. He better win. But obviously, you look at the preseason media polls, and it's safe to say Big 12 media is not very high on Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears, because if he finishes 12th in the Big 12 this year, well, guess what? I don't think he's making it to 2025 as the Baylor Bears head coach, even though he did win that Big 12 championship back in 2021. But then you look at who else is potentially on a hot seat depending on how this season goes. It's not a question of anyone being there now. I don't think anyone else is there now. But is one more bad year for Cincinnati problematic for Scott Satterfield? Same for fellow second-year head coach at Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham. What about BYU as it navigates the Power 4 world while trying to maintain the principles and the standards that they have there in Provo? UCF has enormous talent, but if they don't compete, is Gus going to get some heat? He's done a tremendous job, but, some of the knocks on Gus Malzahn has been, it's not recruiting, it's not talent, it's building that talent up. It's getting that talent to win consistently. Joey McGuire, is he poised to pop in year 3? I think he is. We're all rooting for him. Easy got to root for. But if he doesn't, is there some grumbling in West Texas? So I'm not predicting any of these things right now, but we know that turnover is high in the college football coaching ranks. That's indisputable. That's a fact, not an opinion. So something tells me come the end of the season, or even before then, you're going to have hot seat talk with other coaches in the Big 12, because that's just how the cycle works. That's how the industry operates. You have fan bases, alums, and donors who have the attention span and the patience of an ant. There is none. So now you have to look at it and say, oh, what do we do? How do we respond? What is the answer going to be? And I think come the end of the season, Dave Aranda, if he's still there at Baylor, and we hope that he is, will not be the only guy getting some hot seat talk. Although, you know what? If Aranda turns things around real fast, he just might make it out of there alive and then, be full steam ahead into 2025. But I'll tell you right now, that Baylor schedule, think about it. Baylor's got to play Utah as a non-conference game. They already had it scheduled, so they're not moving it, and it's a non-con. So they've got Tarleton State, Utah, Air Force, and then it's Colorado, BYU, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia, Houston, Kansas. Baylor's in a bunch of coin flip games. That's if I'm being generous. So, if you're saying right now, do I think Dave Aranda makes it to 2025? I would say no. I want him to. Easy guy to like. Easy guy to root for. I've talked to him every year at Big 12 Media Days. Insightful, thoughtful, but man, he's got to get to at least a bowl game to make the powers that be in Waco, I believe, feel good about the direction that they're going. So then you say, who's possibly going to join him? And the only names I could possibly see, and some of them are stretches, I admit, joining him, are Satterfield, Dillingham, Sataki, Malzahn, McGuire. But it would really take a colossal disaster of a year for any of those guys to be shown the door after, or God forbid, during the 2024 college football season. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12. If you'd hit that thumbs up right below the video, that would be a great way to help us out and continue to grow the show here at Heartland College Sports. If you are not on the forums, get on there. We got a lot of Utah and BYU coming into the forums, and they are looking for you, fellow Big 12 fans. So join us. Go to heartlandcollegesports.com and just click on those forum tabs. You can't miss them, and I'm on there all the time. The staff's on there all the time. It's a great way to interact with fellow Big 12 fans. So Jeremy writes here, better to be underrated in the preseason media poll. Just ask Neil Brown and Sonny Dykes the year prior. That's right. As I noted, TCU was picked 7th the year it got to a national championship in the Big 12 poll, not in the national poll, the Big 12 poll. And West Virginia, as I recall, was picked to finish last year in the Big 12. Mike Gundy's always joked about it, and he's made some good points about this. He's like, how do you guys even know what you're doing, especially with the turnover? And he's right in large part. I don't want to say we don't know what we're doing, but I'm not one of these like, yeah, media knows best. I mean, gosh, we certainly don't see that every day, regardless of what form of media you're talking about. But we're all just taking, hopefully, educated guesses. But it is harder than ever to figure out, based on uncertainty around the transfer portal, who's staying, who's going. It's not just like, oh, who was on last year's team? This guy's a year older. Now it's like, is this guy even here, or has he transferred to 7 schools in the offseason? That makes it difficult. And that's why, yes, it is harder than ever to project, especially the Big 12. I mean, you go to the SEC, I'll give you Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. You got a couple of teams you know are going to be in the mix at the end. The Big 12, you know there's going to be that team in the middle of the pack that's going to pop. The question is, who does it end up being? Mark adding here on Facebook Live, I could see a world where Neil Brown finds himself back on the hot seat. Well, he certainly bought himself some time with that 9-win season last year. There's no doubt that Neil Brown bought himself some time. How much time? Well, let's just put it this way. He's got to at least make a bowl game this year, right? The West Virginia schedule is brutal. He's got to at least make a bowl game, even if he comes back down to earth a little bit because of that schedule. But he's got a damn good team. He's got his best team by far he's ever had in Morgantown. Needs to be, looked at going forward. That's just, it's very impressive when you think about what Neil Brown has done. And he deserves a lot of credit for turning this thing around and taking it in the right direction as well. So it is going to be a hell of a conference, a hell of a season. I cannot wait to get to college football. We've got Big 12 Media Days next week. We'll have a couple of staff members, and then it's full-blown preseason mode, baby. Now, you look at the all Big 12 team, that also dropped. QB1 on the preseason offensive all Big 12 team, Shedeur Sanders. That's not going to be controversial, right? Ollie Gordon comes in at running back. Taj Brooks at running back as well. Can I spend a few minutes, though, talking about the Ollie Gordon DUI? Ollie Gordon got busted allegedly drinking and driving last weekend. And, you shake your head. According to the police report, the guy's got a half-drunk bottle of vodka in the seat of his car. This is a guy who was a first-team All-American. He's got Heisman potential. He came back to Stillwater. He wants to have an NFL career, a big-time NFL career. He can have a big-time NFL career, and the dope doesn't take an Uber. It is just inexcusable. And I cannot believe we're sitting here in 2024. He's making the money, by the way. He's got the coin. This isn't 25, 30 years ago where it's, Poor kid, college football star, has no money. Too bad a booster can't give him $20 for a taxi. Dude's making money, and it's never been easier with the dopey phone to get yourself a ride to wherever you're going. And according to the police report, Ollie Gordon is driving 82 and a 65. He's putting other people at tremendous risk. You want to be a moron and put yourself at risk? Fine. You have every right to put yourself at risk by being an idiot. But you're driving on I-35 south of Oklahoma City, 82 and a 65, swerving through traffic. You know what? I've lost a lot of respect. A lot of respect. In many ways, it's very much like Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs, although Rice wasn't drinking and driving. Him and his buddies on Easter weekend were being total jackasses. And, you know, that's obviously been a huge story in the NFL. And Rashee Rice is looking at a multi-game suspension, courtesy of the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs. What does Ollie Gordon's suspension look like? I don't think much. To be honest, I would be shocked if it's more than a couple of games. I believe Ollie Gordon is going to be back for the Utah game September 21st. There is no way that Ollie Gordon misses the Utah game in week 4. Oklahoma State has Big 12 championship potential, which means college football playoff potential. And that game against Utah, that Big 12 opener in Stillwater, is going to go a long way to determine who's the front runner to reach the Big 12 championship game of those two teams. The loser is way behind the 8 ball. The winner has a great head start. Doesn't mean the winner's going to get there to Dallas or Arlington, but they have a great shot to get there out of the gates. I don't see Ollie Gordon missing that game. Whether or not he should, I'll wait for more of the facts to come out. But at the most, Ollie Gordon's getting a 3-game suspension. And some of you are saying on YouTube it's going to be a 1 game against San Diego State. He'll be back for Arkansas in week 2. That might be the case. I'm not denying that might very well be the case. I don't love it, but we see it all the time in college football. It'll be very interesting to see how Mike Gundy handles that and what that all means for, Oklahoma State season, because they can't win with Alan Bowman trying to win them games. And I say that with all due respect to Alan Bowman, but they're just not going to win like they expect to win this year if it's all on Alan Bowman and his arm. There's just not a chance. So that matters as well as you look at this game, this season, and how it's all going to play out going forward. And I think Ollie Gordon's going to be at Big 12 Media Days. At least that's what the list said. So I don't know if he's not going to come anymore. I have no idea what that actually looks like. But if he's going to be there, then, boy, there's going to be a lot of questions. But I would be admittedly shocked if he's still going to be there. But if he's going to be there, then, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. He is scheduled to be there with Alan Bowman from Oklahoma State, along with Nick Martin and Colin Oliver. So that's all coming up next week. We'll have a ton of content on HeartlandCollegeSports.com, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, on the forums. Get on there, sign up. They're free. Utah and BYU fans are flooding the forums. You're actually going to like them. So hop on the forums. They're free to subscribe and a great way to interact with our staff and fellow Big 12 fans. I'm Pete Mundo. We're HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon. Go Big 12. And those of you asking, yes, the 4 new schools are going to be on the back wall on YouTube soon. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. Go Big 12.